This is episode 2 in a succession planning series. We actually did an initial episode with Peter Padden, our founder and shareholder, where he talked about his experience starting up First Focus up until the point that he actually exited. Episode 2, which you should definitely go back and watch if you haven't already, went through his side of the story when it comes to succession planning and execution. And then part 3 today is with Ross Sardi, our CEO, on whether he actually agrees with anything Peter said. So welcome, Ross, if you like that framing. I think where I got to with Peter was he talked a lot about needing to understand why he wanted to be in the business, to then understand, from there what it was that would keep him involved. And when he understood what he wanted from it, he started to understand maybe what he didn't have to personally deliver, what he could look to have someone else contribute. I guess if we can go right back. So this is going back to 2018 that you were asked to come in as he took a sabbatical, right? A 6-month sabbatical.
Right. Yeah.
Is that right?
That's
yeah.
Right.
Okay. So he told me that you'd sort of come in as this ConnectWise, which for us, anyone watching, is a very bit of business critical software that we use, and you'd come in as somewhat of an expert who kind of knew how to do all of that, but because of that you started to be involved in all parts of the business. And at that point you were sort of a peer with other C-level people, right? Other senior leaders in the business.
Yeah, I mean there was no C-level team at the time, right? So I came in as a state manager. There was 3 of us at the time at that level.
A headcount of like 50, 30?
Yeah, 40 something,
Okay.
I think, when I started. And so definitely the thing I noticed when I first started was that, sure, I thought I was stepping up to a much more mature, big business, and probably the first thing I noticed was, it was bigger. It wasn't as mature in some of the areas that I had become accustomed to when it comes to managed services. And the business was actually doing a lot of field services and staff augmentation, other sort of things. And so, I mean, I think it was about week 2, I think I kind of said, hey guys, you could be
Doing everything better?
doing something different. Like ConnectWise, you could do all these things that you're doing manually. You could actually do them like automatically. You don't need to have someone doing that.
Right.
It kind of got me, I was the upstart from WA telling these, coming over and telling people how to do stuff. But that's, certainly what got the remit starting to be broader than just what I was brought in to do, which was grow the WA branch.
Right. And I think you moved to Sydney from WA
About 18 months later, by the time I did that.
Which I think is evidence of quite a lot of buy-in, right? Which I think for Peter as well gave a sense of certainty, I guess, that you were keen, you were in, you don't do that kind of lightheartedly.
No, it still wasn't because I wanted to be the CEO or anything. It was just, it was a next step from what I was doing. And I thought I had some value to bring and thought I'd give it a go for a couple of years. It was, and I think that was, I'd never lived outside WA before. So it was a opportunity to do that personally as well. But there was no long-term intent in it. There was some intent.
Mm-hmm. So what do you remember about that time then if Peter was going, like he had a young family at that point and he'd sort of had this offer previously to purchase the business, which really made him think about what's important to him and why does he care. So he's starting to look at this and thinking, actually, I need a bit of time to just having run pretty hot for a long time to get to where it was. What do you remember about the conversations with him at that point?
Look, it started 2015. So I started 2014. So it said, 2015, that was the first time we actually had an offsite. Right? We actually all got together. Right. There was 10 of us, I think, that kind of made up what we called the management team at the time. It was a bunch of, there's a few state managers, there was a service desk manager, there was we had a general manager at the time, kind of an offsider for Peter. But that was our first offsite where we actually set up some of those foundational, we answered some of those foundational questions around values and purpose, which, maybe were in, at least some of them were in Peter's mind up until then, but certainly hadn't been articulated.
Right.
And so that really was the start of that next phase. And so the conversations we were having were all back to the fact that we'd now created a why, articulated a why, articulated an end goal, which was the BHAG, big hairy audacious goal. And so the conversations were really about, well, what do we need to do this quarter? Well, what do we need to do this quarter? Well, what do we need to do this quarter? And that 20-mile march concept. And so again, it was, in some ways, it's not long-term strategic conversations. It's what do we need to do this quarter, knowing what my long-term goal is. And in essence, that is strategy, right?
Sure.
So yeah, those were the conversations. It wasn't a specific conversation around and I want to run it one day. Like that wasn't certainly what the conversations we were having then.
But the first time he approached it with you, so, or was it more that, hey, I'm going out for 6 months, I'll see you when I get back. In the meantime, don't break anything? Or was it?
No, well, it was a little bit more organic. It was a one function. I think it was a sales now. I was looking at all service, and then sales manager kind of moved on, or what didn't work out. And hey, why don't we bring sales under you as well? And then it was, some other function. Why don't we? And so it was incremental rather than a big step. And probably the conversation you're talking about, kind of that sabbatical was. We'd got to a point where I think it was only finance that didn't report to me.
Right, okay.
We had a change of finance. It was finance manager, and I kind of said, well, what do you want me to do the hiring this time kind of thing? And so it was, by that stage, it was kind of, I guess what does that mean for, it was probably, at least from my perspective, maybe it was master planned in Peter's mind. From my perspective, it was a little bit more organic and a little bit... not necessarily intentional. Well, each step was intentional, but the whole, it wasn't intentional kind of, here I am, state manager, I'm going to be CEO one day.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, that's interesting, because one of the things Peter said as well was that it was the ability to forecast effectively and with a lot of accuracy that came along from some of the work I think you'd been doing with ConnectWise.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to, even... Owner's 100% is going to be the worst, but even any manager struggles to delegate control to a team. Like, it's one of the biggest challenges you're going to have is trusting in the team. And so absolutely that ability to report up with confidence for someone to get a sense of what's going on from a single pane dashboard, all those kinds of things. Yeah, they come from all those projects over the previous quarters. Right. And I think that gave him the confidence. And you have to hit the numbers though as well, right?
Well,
you can have a forecast that's great, but if it forecast is actually wrong.
So, but how is that then for you? If you're in effect from the moment he goes on sabbatical to never return, the CEO, how long do you feel like you're in control? Like you've had a chance to, if you think there needs to be a course correct. There's a couple of questions here really. One is, how able do you feel in that moment to be able to course correct or to change some things to better enable yourself to hit those goals? And then I guess, how hard is it to buy into goals when you're going into that for the first time?
So, maybe I answer the question in a slightly different way. You can tell me if I don't answer it correctly, but someone asked me at the time what my version of First Focus was going to be. And I think that is quite important, that you have to have the confidence not just to do exactly... it's not
just maintain.
Yeah, that's right. You're not just here to caretake. Even though it's a sabbatical and it was going to be 12 months, my assumption at that point was that even if he was coming back, it wasn't going to be into the same seat doing the same things. You know what I mean, right? He'd come back, but 12 months is a long time.
Yeah, it's hard to get pumped to go, I'm back to do the exact same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's going to come back and there's an opportunity to go, okay, well, I can make sure when that happens 12 months from now that there's confidence that it was a good decision and he doesn't need to come back. I mean, there's obviously ways for him to come back.
Sure.
But yeah, you have to have confidence to set your own goals and do it within that's why you have to set purpose and value. Like you can't be in conflict with that. And this is probably the hardest part of all for both people in this scenario, I think, is the ability for one person to go, well, that's not the way I would have done it. And the ability for me in this case to go, well, I know that's not the way you would have done it, but I'm going to do it anyway because I believe that's right. And so I think you can have space to have that individual apply that individual kind of thought. As long as if it's in conflict, you're going to have a problem, right?
Sure.
So I don't know if that answered it at all. But
what I'm hearing is I should tell you more often that I hear you, but I'm not going to listen and actually do it when I've got a better idea.
As long as if it works, right? Because you get a few chances, and then if it doesn't work, then the 12 months sabbatical would have been 12 months, or maybe only 9, I guess.
Okay. I'll save those for when I'm sure I'm right, which hasn't happened yet. Okay, so then all of that, I think, revolves around or relies on a really strong relationship, or at least good communication, right? So how did you guys kind of establish that base? Did you have a few sort of course corrects prior to kind of realizing how you both preferred to communicate, or did you kind of just head it off and that was why it worked so well?
Interesting question. I haven't really thought about it before in terms of the communication. I think I'm in an area that I feel like I'm an expert at, and I felt like managed services, I was as much of an expert as I could be. I mean, obviously you're always going to learn more stuff, but I felt like I probably the communication bit that probably makes it work is that I wasn't shy about sharing a view or how something should work. But upwards. And I think probably up till then, maybe people hadn't been able to articulate that to Peter very, very well, that his idea was wrong, or this is how you should do that. And it's not a no, but it's a yes and, or yes and this is how. I wouldn't say, I'm not sure we ever actually sat down and had a conversation about how we communicate with each other or anything like that.
Well, that's probably a sign that you communicated really well. If you don't need to have those moments, right? It's like, hey, there's not actually a problem to address here.
No, and I think where it I think comes out is that don't think either of us leave stuff unsaid.
Yep.
And like if he disagrees, he'll tell me. If I disagree, I'll tell him. And I think that's probably what creates the rest of it. I don't think, I said, it's not something that we had to explicitly talk about, that we had to be like that. I think we just probably naturally are a little bit, and I guess comfortable to do that.
And I guess coming back to the BHAG and the purpose, the mission, it's understanding that you're both trying to get to the same place. I guess having that shared understanding. So there's no I think Ron, everyone's very clear. You got the same goal in mind because it's set.
And that was done collaboratively as well, and it's obviously got to be a big part of his vision in that, but the whole group, I and a bunch of other people all agreed to that, right? And then everyone we hired since, that you're hoping they're agreeing to that as they're joining the organization and buying into that vision. So everyone should be collectively kind of agreeing to that, which gives you a lot of flexibility to trust that everyone's making good decisions because you're all going towards the same thing.
How hard was it to get everyone else on board with the change? Because I imagine there are egos. It sounds like maybe the hierarchy was maybe more set than Peter made it sound, that there was maybe some nice timings of some other changes or whatever, but were there either other egos that needed to be soothed, or just people who were a bit unsure, like change is scary and what's this going to mean?
I think the bigger changes had probably already occurred prior to that.
Okay.
As I said, by the time I was COO, I was already managing most of the team, and I think there were a couple of step changes pre that. And so going from being a state manager to now running a state manager, that happens lots of different points through people's career where suddenly you're in the team, now you're managing the team, right? But I think that probably happened twice along the way, kind of thing.
Okay.
I wouldn't say there are egos to be managed, but the one conversation I do remember having with Peter probably 12 months prior was something like, if I was to put you in charge of that right now, I can't remember what point it was, but if I was to put you in charge of that right now, then that person would probably leave. That idea that, well, for me to promote you, if you to be put in charge of something, it has to be a change that will be accepted by the team. And so, I took it on myself. When I went away 12 months, it's like, well, my job is to make sure that if that happens at some point, it's not going to be quick. Like it's going to be almost a preconceived decision. If not preconceived is the wrong word, like a decision that kind of just makes sense because everyone can see that it's already going in that way. So the decision's kind of just the the end point.
It's the obvious outcome of a range of other scenarios, I guess, or prior outcomes. Not quite sure how best to articulate that.
Yeah. So, but I do remember that conversation, and it was okay. Well, if right now people wouldn't want to work for me, other senior people, may not want to work for me. Well, how do I need to? What do I need to do to change that? So that because that's not what I would want to occur. I wouldn't want that if to go into that role, you don't want to have to go into it and it be a battle. And Peter wouldn't want to make that decision knowing that other senior people were going to exit the business or something, right? So
yeah, I mean that's already a lot of change. You don't want even more. What he was planning on doing. So you know how like a salesperson will come into a business and they'll get a ramp up, right? They'll get 3 months, 6 months, whatever, to kind of get some runs on the board. Coming in as the new CEO, how long into the role was it until you felt like this is my impact, rather than kind of continuing with a set of momentum?
Yeah, I would look, for me, probably not. I didn't see it like that, because I actually think that, I said, it was probably the prior 12 months that I already felt like I was running the business, just not in name.
Okay.
At least the prior 6 months. I said, by 6 months prior, everyone reported to me anyway, right?
Which is kind of the key lesson in this story, as far as I can see, right? Is that there are no significant moments. There's a bunch of small moments, and they're all really in the same direction and building upon each other.
That's right. And so by the time something happens, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's old news. It's
there is no fear.
cool.
There is no seismic shift. It's just sure, okay. We've been building towards this. It's been clear, and it's happening for a bunch of reasons, which in retrospect makes sense. Okay.
So that's maybe we had the luxury of doing that. Maybe sometimes you don't have the luxury to. Sometimes you just need to make a decision, and someone needs to step up if someone leaves. But I think there was no fixed timeline. There was no rush. I think it happened when it made sense to happen.
Okay. So like looking back then, because it's been how many years now? God, 7 since you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anything you would do differently, or any, I guess, advice you'd give other business owners as they're looking to essentially exit in favor of a management team or a CEO taking over the reins, based off your own experience?
Well, I see owners trying to hire a clone of themselves, or hire a manager to do the things they're not great at, but then wonder why they don't do things exactly the same as them. Like, I think that the key is to understand that they are going to be a very different person, and I could not have got a business from 0 to 45 staff, right? Like, that's not where my strength was, but there are different strengths that you need in that next phase.
Yeah.
And so, what advice? What do you say to other owners? You're not going to find someone to replace you as an owner, but that's also the point. You don't want just you as the owner. You need someone that's different, that brings something different to the table. The hard part, I see the owners all the time. The hardest part is, even when something, and you probably have it as a manager as well. I have it as a manager, when you see someone doing something that's like, not the way I would have done it, or I think I could do it better, or and even more so when it fails, and you're going to hope that that's a learning experience and they'll do it differently next time, not going to be the rescuer. And I think it's hard enough as a manager to do that, right? You've probably experienced that as well.
Yep.
Harder, I think, if you're the owner, because it's your money on the table and it's your business that really, that amplifies it. But I actually think, from my perspective, I think I make better decisions because of it.
Okay.
Because I don't have that thing that's kind of,
there's not the weight on you, the crushing weight. It's you feel like there's of course there's always risk, but if the risk is not so insurmountable, so significant that it paralyzes you.
Yeah, and I'm more willing to, stay the course, do something that I know is right, not be maybe swayed by the fire of the day, which is, I think as an owner, if something's, I think as a, general rule, I think that's probably where I see owners will probably go a little bit more to, either the greatest opportunity or the greatest fire, and because that's the entrepreneurial nature, then they're going to do that. But also there's a risk element to what they're seeing here. And as opposed to just that little bit more, as I said, rigor and structure. I think that the kind of, as I said, CEO in the next phase tends to want to bring.
It's funny though, because you and Peter have very different attributes. I think he's clearly
in some areas.
It's true. There's got to be some Venn diagram crossover here.
That's
somewhere.
right. Yeah.
But he's definitely got the entrepreneurial, let's just get it done kind of a vibe, right?
Yeah.
And you are an extremely regimented and process driven, person who puts a lot of bits together and kind of goes, what happens there if we do this or whatever.
But also has that pace setting, get it done. And that's
true.
I'm like other people, like Peter would see me as that, the rigor, whereas most of the exec team see me as the fast, do it all faster. How can we get through? I think it's a role almost that you play as opposed to an attribute.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Because I was going to sort of come up with a theory that maybe there's a scale at which that change needs to happen, or is best to happen at, because of the benefit of having one approach against the other at a certain scale. And the question was going to be, A, is that a thing? B, at what scale potentially? But I think you're right. You definitely do. While I don't think it's your primary sort of, it's not how I define you as a person who's just, seat of the pants, let's just get it done.
Yeah.
You are right that you play that part when needed to get action. So that's true. But do you think there is a scale at which, it makes sense for an entrepreneurial, kind of a less process-driven owner to maybe hand over the reins?
It's probably when you shift from having to do whatever it takes to get the next sale or the next, it's to actually being able to rely on a process and structure to do it. There's enough credibility that exists for the business to stand on its own 2 feet, and it's not going to be standing on the strength of a person anymore. Because I think small businesses often are an extension of the owner, and I said at some point it has to be, well, the business is not the owner anymore, it's the business. And I think that change, where at some point it's people are attracted to First Focus in the early days because of Peter.
Sure. Yeah,
right? Yeah. Eventually it changes to be because of First Focus.
Yeah.
I think that's the shift.
And then that comes down to the owner-led sales piece too, right? It's surely a big part of anyone's willingness to back out would be if they believe that they've moved to a point where there can be organic growth without them. Like that can't just be the sort of the cult of personality, like you say, where it's like, we love that guy, let's give him some money. It's got to be, there's actually value, process, outcomes,
right,
all that sort of stuff. So maybe that's one of the triggers.
Yeah, and I think it's going to come back to the personal attributes of that founder as well, how technical they are, how structured they are, how sales oriented they are, how financial they are, and there's generally going to be a big spectrum. I mean, you see businesses that have scaled massively with the founder still in charge, right? Generally with a strong structure too, I see probably next to them.
Yeah.
But that's probably more about who's the team around that person. I'm sure at some point, like, I don't know, we go and list on the publicly, and again it's probably a different CEO again, because maybe I'm too far on the side of let's just get it, and you need a governance focus.
What is this public accountability? No.
The governance stuff, the board of directors. I mean, maybe that's not me, right? And so that's, at some point, I think there are different CEOs for different parts of a company's growth, or you evolve with that, and maybe I do become that person one day.
I'm sure you can adapt, but whether you'd want to is the question.
So as I said, it's not. I think, and it's probably no different from a founder perspective. It's like, I think some people can stay longer if they are wanting to learn and adapt and do different things and build a team around them. And
I think so. I've worked in a business where there were two shareholders, but they were both very keen to take out as much money as they could. Whereas I spoke to Peter, and he was playing a long game. He was doubling down. He was putting money back in. And how important for you was it to know that you were aligned on the long-term growth? I know you had the BHAG, which is great early on, but his willingness to actually demonstrate the buy-in towards that goal, almost at the expense of his own short-term wealth, really, at least from a cash perspective.
I'm not sure I considered it like that at the time. Maybe I should have, but there was enough of a track record of every quarter we were doing stuff to make the business better. We were growing. That probably spoke for the rest. I probably not sure anyone actually took that much time to think about those sorts of questions.
Okay.
Bills could be paid on time. The company was growing. You know what I mean? There was it was probably more the results that told the story. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I thought about it like that. Thinking back now, I'm like, well, why? Maybe why didn't I? Well, but it never really came up. It's gonna sound weird, but
that's fair enough. Though I mean, I probably just have a deep. I just have horrible memories of going, man, we could do so much if only all of the money wasn't going out of the business all the time.
Yeah,
and it was a real handbrake, is how I remember it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it probably comes back to the forecasting and the fact that our forecast was not just for this year. Like, we constantly roll with this 3-year forecast, and so I already know what the numbers need to look like, not just today or this year, but for the next 3 years. And so that, we have an agreed level of profitability. We have an agreed sort of growth number. So yeah, I think that gives you confidence that, that we all agreed that that's achievable. So let's go and do it.
Just out of interest, I've only got 2 more questions, but that 3-year forecast, the forecast doc coming into the business, kind of blew my mind. A lot to it, quite significant. Number of cells. How unique is that in your experience? Because again, having come across it, First Focus is the biggest company I've worked in.
Yeah.
And I guess B, if it's not very common, when are you going to turn that into a SaaS offering of some sort?
Yeah. I think a lot of businesses run forecasts. Mm-hmm. The difference is, I think that not enough businesses overlay actual data into the forecast. They're kind of more long-term budgets, if you know what I mean. And I think we talk real numbers into there and adjust modeling in real time. And I say real time, but certainly weekly. Mm-hmm. That rolling weekly forecast cycle. Talking month end is kind of like month end's not barely a thing, right? Look, I can't say. I haven't worked in a lot of other businesses. I know when we look to buy small businesses, obviously they don't do something like that. But even when I talk to whether it's customers, whether it's other people in CEO peer groups, most people are still stuck on setting an annual budget, doing month end and how many days after close. And it to me, that feels old school, as opposed to every week that spreadsheet is our best guess of the next 3 years. Full stop.
Yep.
That's and the level of granularity to which we want that to get to an accuracy point where we can manage a profit forecast down to a pretty tight number and know when to spend, know when not to. It's a decision-making tool.
Yeah, massively. Yeah. If this, then that, or everything's got a line to it, which is what I find so both comforting and also terrifying, is that any decision is very much there is an impact and there is a place for it, and that's quite unique. And I guess that's the question I was going to finish with: is why First Focus? Why the success here and not at other MSPs? In fact, most other MSPs, in fact, almost all other MSPs. Is it because, I mean, sure, there's more than one reason, but to limit to a few, I mean, the forecasting capability and I guess the rigor put into that has to be one of them.
That's one. Exceptional people that are aligned with the same values and with the same goal in mind, you can achieve exceptional things. Like I think a lot of my job, there's strategy pieces, there's the financial forecasting, but a lot of it, the business really grows by the people that happen to work here, if you know what I mean. And so if you can create more people that happen to work here, if you know what I mean, then that changes the direction of the business. I mean, I think that everything we've done is because of someone that works here. Everything.
Yeah, it's good, cool.
Right? So the business evolves based on a collection of all the ideas of the people that work here. So if we can collect all the best people in the industry and bring them together and have them working here and, make them, and I wouldn't say best people in the industry, best people in the industry that are 100% aligned to what we want to do. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of great people in the industry that could go off and do something different on a tangent, but that
kind of aligns with something else Peter said, which is values are only values if you're prepared to have them at a cost. And that means sometimes saying no to people who could potentially do good things but aren't aligned, right?
Right. So, and there's some really long-term members of the team that, ultimately what we do is a manifestation of all the ways they believe business should be run or managed services should be delivered. It's a collection of the ideas that we've had driving to work that morning or in the shower.
Weirdest places to get the best ideas.
They are, right? Like, wherever you can't write them down, that's generally the
that's absolutely okay, Google, repeat this.
But so the people combined with the right system, wrapped around a common values and purpose. I think that's essentially what creates the magic. Could you go off and have the same people and do something amazing in a different industry? It's something I've often pondered. It's like, could you go off and be the CEO in a different industry, or do you need that depth of kind of industry knowledge to really excel?
And at what scale would that no longer matter? At what scale does the CEO role itself change to the point that experience isn't what makes you great?
Yeah, because I still would consider myself an expert at managed services and in the technology that we provide. I think that makes me better at my job.
Yep.
And I'd say the same as you get Phil, head of account management, who again is his heart technical, wanting to help people. Like that alignment is has been really powerful over the years. But where we all want the same thing, and we all think it should be done in somewhat a similar way, if you know what I mean. Because yes, you want to bring in other people with other ideas, but you can't do everything. And we've talked a lot about, you got to, there's some things we've agreed on as part of our core way of how we want to deliver services to our customers and who our customer is and all this kind of stuff. Like you can't be chopping and changing that. Like there are some things that you kind of go, this is set. And then you bring the right people in and create the right systems.
I keep saying it's my last question, but this is kind of like a one-on-one. I don't get a lot of time to just sit down and ask you questions and demand answers. So I got a couple more. One is, how does the role of CEO change from coming on board 7 years ago with 50 odd staff to now having 300 plus, 11 acquisitions, etc.? Because I saw something the other day. I actually watched a video the other day. It was the classic. Actually, no, it was Peter talking about it, and I gave the example of Jeff Bezos saying, as CEO, his role really is to make a couple of huge decisions a day or a week or whatever.
Yeah.
So yes, you've got all that experience. Yes, operationally, you could still dominate, but how does the role to do it well, at least, how has it changed?
The biggest change comes from the decisions you talk about, or whatever cadence that might be, that you're making kind of big decisions, the ability for that decision to become action or actually become into reality is probably what changes the most. So when you're small, I can make a decision, you can tell everyone, you can go off and do something. So the biggest thing that changes is, the art of communication, and communicating through others who are then communicating through others. It's that, that's certainly the bit that's changed the most. I still think that remaining, relevant to what we do is really important to me personally. And I said, maybe that's not, I'm sure there's plenty of CEOs that probably go away from that over time. So
you think of the like client interaction, making sure you're still getting FaceTime, being at the round table, like hosting round tables, all that kind of stuff, or
more or that, but actually still being a technology expert for the businesses that we manage. Essentially, I'm like, if we're an outsourced IT department for all of our clients, well, I'm essentially the top of that department, right? And so I think there's still a really important reason why we need to be, and so we as in the executive team need to be kind of the industry experts in what we do.
Can I just be on marketing and sales?
You know a lot about a lot of different technologies.
Yeah, put me at UCAS
telco,
and telco.
marketing automation. I mean, there's lots of things that you could legitimately talk to our customers about and add value.
It's good, actually. I had a chat with Carl. He actually asked me for advice about voice and setting up resiliency, and it wasn't because I went to him. So go me, give him some ideas. So there you go.
Look, and so just the same as a law firm, the managing partner is, if there's you still want, if you can have the managing partner represent you in court, it's still like at some level, professional organizations, I think, are better when led by someone who is still not going to know everything about everything, but has expert knowledge in that domain.
Yeah, probably the only change I've seen in my brief time here, a year and a half-ish now, is probably you're less, your project management is less hands-on, it's more delegated. Like you don't want to be the person anymore. When I first came in, you were planner boards and tasks, and now you're kind of like, no, these are our priorities. These are the owners of those priorities. Now be gone.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think having to be more external facing and both with customers and in the industry and being the face of First Focus. I mean, it's not a great face, but it's okay.
Does the job.
I think
so. I'm not supposed to be self-deprecating, by the way, but this guy can be, so that's fine. Carry on. Yeah.
So look, I think that's the other bit that's changed, and being more of that, you have to let go of some other stuff. I almost feel like I'm losing the skill at doing some of that detailed project management now because I'm not. I'm having to play the role of being the bring the ideas and do the external stuff. So I actually feel like I'm getting worse at the other stuff, which is probably fine.
It is funny though. You pick up new skills. Like, I mean, this camera stuff for you is very new. Speaking at a lot of events now is relatively new. I think you've probably done it for a while, but the scale of them and the number is up, right?
Yeah.
And being seen, as you said earlier, as a domain knowledge expert. Like you've been asked to come up and speak about even acquisitions now. Like a couple of years back, that wasn't where you were seen as maybe an absolute expert, but now you are. So I think maybe, it must be. I don't know. You've got to be fairly adaptable, and for me, I would find it hard to see myself as the market maybe does in real time. Like you're starting to be seen as AI expert or acquisitions expert or whatever to kind of keep pace with the external view of you in that category. That would be tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see it as it's what's expected. You know, I'm probably still more comfortable behind a computer screen, and but I don't. At some level, that's not what I need to be anymore. For other people within First Focus and for our customers, that's and I think when it's of an area of expertise, I at least I'm comfortable talking to it, gets me out from behind my computer.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we'll just do one little plug here, which is to say, with all the expertise you've got in essentially managing an MSP, handling an exit, or being a part of a fairly, I mean, not an exit per se, but an operational exit at least, and having handled so many acquisitions and, in the last 2 years, if there is anybody that is looking to exit an MSP, an owner of an MSP currently that's looking to understand that experience, to understand valuation, to just talk to you as an opening point, they know where to find you. LinkedIn maybe is a good start. Otherwise, Ross Sardi at firstfocus.com.au. But as I said, if you haven't already watched the first couple of episodes in this series with Peter Padden, please go back and look at them. Otherwise, we'll see you in a week.